Welcome to lesson 3 in our fairy tales and tall tales. We're actually on our last fairy tale for our unit. Now, this fairy tale is going to be broken into 2 parts, so there's going to be 2 lessons on this one fairy tale. And a lot of you may have heard about this fairy tale, The Beauty and the Beast. Now, before we start Beauty and the Beast, let's talk about our 2 read alouds, our first two fairy tales we've already talked about. Remember, fairy tales often have royal characters. Who are the royal characters in our first 2 stories? So one royal character was the emperor in our last story, and in the first story was the magic fish. Remember, he was an enchanted prince. Fairy tales have magical characters or maybe magical events. Are there any magical characters in the fisherman and his wife? What about the emperor's new clothes? Yeah, there wasn't really a magical character, but those characters, the 2 swindlers, they were pretending to have magic. Again, we heard some vocabulary from our first 2 read alouds. I'm going to read the word. After I read the word, you repeat that word with me. Displeases. Curious. Let's do it again. Displeases. Curious. One more time. Displeases. Curious. Which one of these 2 words means wanting to know more about something? Yeah, it's curious. Which word has a prefix in it? Remember, prefixes are those little mini words that attach itself at the beginning, and it's in the word displeases. Let's quickly review some characteristics of a fairy tale. What are some characteristics? We kind of just went over some right at the beginning. So you should have made a list of these things. Fairy tales begin with once upon a time or something similar, and so on. So when I introduce the story, Beauty and the Beast, a lot of students go, wait, I know this story. And then guess what they do? They don't really want to listen to the story. Or they will say, no, that's not the story. So in these 2 pictures, these are 2 maybe of the movies that you got to see of Beauty and the Beast. But guess what? The movies can be different from the story. There are going to be some different things. Just because there's something different in the story doesn't mean it's wrong. A lot of the times, so in this case, the movies were made after the story. And sometimes the movies just change up a few things just to make it a little more entertaining or make it a little more dramatic. Sometimes they change things up. So you're going to hear some differences from the movies you watched to the story that we read. One quick example right away is the main character in these. She is named Belle. But in our story, they call her Beauty. So there's going to be some differences in our story. That doesn't mean it's wrong, and it doesn't mean our story is incorrect. It just sometimes the movies just take on something a little bit different. So after we read this story, you should be able to identify the characteristics of a fairy tale. So by the end of this, you need to know what parts make up a fairy tale. And also you need to show understanding of the word fortune. So in today's read aloud, again, we're going to be hearing the story of Beauty and the Beast. And this story actually is like a classic fairy tale. It has the once upon a time as the beginning. It has a royal character, it has magical characters or events, and it has a happy ending to it. Again, we're going to have 2 parts of this story. So we're going to read half the story today, and tomorrow we'll finish up the second half of the story. So listen and try to identify the different characteristics of this fairy tale as you listen to this story. Once upon a time, in a faraway country, there lived a merchant with his 3 daughters. A merchant is somebody who buys and sells goods to make money. The merchant was very rich. Indeed, he had more money than he needed until a series of great misfortunes occurred. Fortune means wealth, but it also means good luck. What do you think misfortune means? First, the merchant lost two of his biggest ships full of cargo in a great storm at sea. Then he was forced to give up his lavish home in the city because he could no longer afford to pay for it. Lavish means very expensive and fancy. The merchant lost his fortune or his wealth and was left with nothing. He told his daughters that they would have to move to a little cottage in the woods, far from town, and work hard and live simply. Do you think it would be difficult for the merchant and his daughters to leave a life of wealth and expensive living and comfort and to begin a life that's hard? The two older daughters complained bitterly, for they had grown accustomed to a life of luxury. But the youngest daughter, who was called Beauty, always tried to make the best of things. Several months later, the merchant heard that one of his ships, which he had thought had been lost at sea, had in fact landed with a cargo of valuable goods to sell. As the merchant prepared to make the long trip to the city to claim his goods, he asked his daughters what he might bring them when he returned. The eldest daughter asked for a fancy gown. Eldest means the oldest of the sisters. The second daughter asked for a diamond necklace. But Beauty, who had plenty of things she wished for, but none that her father's money could buy, replied politely, "Please bring me a rose, for I have not seen one since we came here, and I love them so much." When the merchant finally reached his ship, he found that most of his goods had been stolen. How do you think the merchant felt to find out that his cargo had been stolen? He sold what remained and had made just enough money to buy a dress for his eldest daughter and a necklace for his second daughter. Then he set off for home. Did he forget something? On the way home, snow began to fall. It covered the road and made it hard to see. The wind blew so hard it almost knocked the merchant off his horse. He was worried that he might get lost in the blizzard. The merchant decided that he should stop at the next house he came to and wait there until the storm passed. Eventually, he came upon a large palace with lights blazing. He knocked at the door, but no one answered. He found the door was unlocked, so he opened it and peered in. "Hello? Hello?" he called out, but there's no answer. He stepped into the foyer or the front hall and brushed the snow off his coat. Curious, yet hesitant, the merchant slowly made his way into a large dining hall. To his surprise, a fire was burning in the fireplace and a little table had been set with a sumptuous meal, just right for one person. Based on what you guys see in this picture, what does the word sumptuous mean? Would a sumptuous meal mean a simple meal or a meal with many fine foods? "Hello?" he called again. "Is anybody here?" Again, no answer. The merchant inspected the food. "Is someone eating this food?" he asked. "Would you mind if I had a few bites? I've been riding in a bitter snowstorm and," he continued. When there was no reply, the merchant decided that he would have a few bites of food, then look for his gracious host. After he had eaten, he set off to find the owner of the house to thank him. He wandered through the rooms on the ground floor, but neither master nor servant appeared. At last he stepped outside into a beautiful garden. The merchant was astonished or amazed to discover that the garden was in full bloom, even though it was the middle of winter and most of the countryside was covered in a thick blanket of snow. Do you think it's strange that the trees in the garden are untouched by snow? Or do you think this is something that normally happens? In the garden, birds chirped, flowers bloomed, the air was sweet and balmy. Balmy means weather that is warm and calm. The man explored the garden until he came upon a row of beautiful rose bushes. He remembered that Beauty had asked him to bring her a rose. He reached out to pluck a rose, but just as the stem broke, he heard a loud roar behind him. "Who told you that you might gather roses in my garden?" said a low, gruff voice. The startled merchant turned around and saw a fearsome beast who was half man and half beast. Based on what you know about the word fear, what do you guys think the word fearsome means? "What?" said the beast. "Is it not enough that I have given you dinner and a place to wait out the storm? You must also steal my roses?" The beast thought the merchant was ungrateful to pick the rose after he gave the merchant a nice meal and a warm place to stay. "Please forgive me," said the merchant, falling to his knees. "I tried to find you and thank you for the meal. I will pay for it if you like it. As for the rose, I only wanted it for my youngest daughter, Beauty. Her only wish when I left her was that I return with a rose for her. Your garden was so magnificent, I did not think you would miss a single rose." "You are very ready with excuses and flattery," the beast said, "but that will not save you from the punishment you deserve." What do you think the beast will do to the merchant? "Oh, forgive me," said the merchant. "If not for my own sake, then for the sake of my daughters. If I do not return home, there will be no one to support or take care of them." There was a long pause. Then the beast spoke again. What do you think will happen next? Will he let the merchant go? "I will forgive you," the beast said, "on one condition. You must send one of your daughters to live with me. Go and see if any of them is brave enough and loves you enough to save you from a life in my castle. If one of them will come, you may send her in your place. Otherwise, you must come yourself and face your punishment." Do you think any of the merchant's daughters would return to that place? When the storm was over, the merchant returned home. He gave his daughters their presents: a gown for the eldest, a diamond necklace for the second, and a rose for Beauty. The older sisters were delighted, but Beauty could sense that something was wrong. "Father," she said, "why did you sigh so deeply when you gave me that beautiful rose?" "In a few days I will tell you," said the merchant. "But for now, let's just enjoy being together again." Let's go through some of our uh, comprehension questions. What happens to the merchant's family when he loses his fortune? Who is the royal character in this story? What about what was magical about the story? Why was the beast described as fearsome? Let's make some predictions now. Do you think the merchant will return? Do you think one of the merchant daughters will go in his place? Which one? Let's go through our word work, and our word work for today is the word fortune. What sound is the letters O and R making in this word fortune? Fortune. Yeah, it's making the or sound. Why would this word be considered a tricky word? Remember, tricky words don't follow the rules, and I think one key one is that T is kind of making a ch sound. Fortune. That's definitely a tricky word. T's don't make ch. What do you think the word fortune means? Talked about it quite a bit in our read aloud. Fortune means great wealth or good luck. Some people consider the four-leaf clover a symbol of good fortune. Remember, it's good luck to have a four-leaf clover. Do you know someone that has good fortune? I know for me, one of my friends, they always have good fortune. They'll enter, they'll put their name in a little prize, and their name always gets called. I think he's been on the radio a bunch of times. He's gotten free tickets to baseball games, and so he's gotten a lot of free things. He's definitely somebody that's has very good fortune. Now, our activity with this word is I'm going to read a sentence, and if it is good luck, then you're going to say that is good fortune. Now, if it is bad luck, we're going to add the prefix miss. Remember, that prefix is a little tiny word that goes at the beginning of a word to make it a different meaning. So misfortune means bad luck. So if I read the sentence and it's bad luck, you'll say that is misfortune. The merchant lost his ship at sea. That would be misfortune. The merchant had a healthy family. That is good fortune. The merchant had a lavish home. That is good fortune. The merchant had more money than he needed. I think that is good fortune too. In today's application, what you are going to be doing is there are three different parts in this story. You're going to decide what happened first between those two parts. So you see, number one, there's two sentences. Number two, in the white, there's two sentences. Number three, there's two sentences. You got to decide out of those two sentences, which one of them goes first. After you do this activity, we'll see you again tomorrow with Beauty and the Beast, Part 2. Thank you for listening.